Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of Dose of Derm, a dermatology guide for medical students. My name is Emma Holjak.
And my name is Iryna Savinova. And on today's episode, we will be interviewing Dr. Christina Huang. Dr. Huang is in her final year of dermatology residency at the University of Toronto, where she serves as one of the chief residents. She was born in China, raised in Winnipeg, and did her medical school training at Queen's University before moving to Toronto for residency.
Outside of medicine, some of her hobbies include playing volleyball, working out, and running. She is currently training for her first marathon. Without further ado, we are excited to introduce to you Dr. Christina Huang.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much for being here. We were just talking earlier about how we've been kind of watching you grow within your own social media platforms. And so it's really cool to kind of have you jump into our world as well, do a little crossover here. So thank
Oh
you.
my gosh. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So we're really excited to hear about your dermatology experiences and what your kind of day looks like. So maybe to start us off, could you speak a little bit about your medical school journey and your path to finding dermatology in the first place?
Yeah, great question. I always love hearing everyone's stories because everyone seems to have a different path. And even though you have different paths, we all kind of end up in the same place, which is really interesting. For me personally, my journey in undergrad was probably a little bit untraditional. I'm not sure if you guys heard of the Queen's Accelerated Medical School program, the CaRMS program.
Yes, yeah.
But so that was what I was a part of. So it was a little bit different in that it was out of high school and it was 2 years. So I did 2 years in sciences and then into the med school, still 4 years at Queen's. So I did, I guess I did my pseudo undergrad light, I guess, and medical school both at Queen's. And as you guys probably know, Queen's doesn't have a dermatology program. So finding dermatology for me was relatively late. And I would say probably also a little bit untraditional and almost coincidental, which I still think is a very lucky coincidence today. So initially, I think I was really interested in procedural aspects of medicine and was more interested in exploring the surgical subspecialties. So, like any medical student, I set up a lot of observerships in various specialties in surgery. But I don't know, I enjoyed it, but I never really felt like it clicked. Just, being in the OR as a med student, I wasn't sure if it was the specialty or if it was the staff that day, or just the fact that, you're maybe not doing as much as a medical student that I didn't find myself fully engaged. And so that's when I kind of questioned my decisions when I talked with my friends that ended up in surgery, even though they weren't doing much and they had the similar experiences to me, they were really gung ho about it. They loved every minute of it. And they would say, time flies. Whereas for me, I just personally didn't find that. And it was almost disappointing at first because this is what I thought I wanted to do, right? And so I actually came across dermatology through Mohs surgery. I was exploring the different surgical specialties, and we did have a Mohs surgeon in Kingston. And, for me, that was a good mix because it wasn't in the OR. You were still very procedural. The cases were relatively quick, and, the patient wasn't under anesthesia. You could still talk to the patient. And I just found the creativity part of it and reconstructing it as well very, very fascinating. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon dermatology. I realized that Mohs surgery was actually part of dermatology. And so after I realized that, I did more exploration into the dermatology field. And I really just fell in love with the fast-paced nature, the intersection between the procedures and the surgeries with medicine. And, after doing some research in the field as well, really saw the innovation in this field and all the new things coming down the pipeline. And it's just a very exciting time to be in dermatology right now. So yeah, that's kind of my path to how I found derm.
Wow, that's so interesting. I actually didn't even realize that there was a Mohs surgeon in Kingston. I don't think there's many in Hamilton, so I know that the dermatologists that we work with here always refer to plastic surgeons for skin cancers. So wow, I can't believe there was one in Kingston. That's very cool.
I think there is still, it might be different now, but I know some people still work at Kingston General Hospital, or is it Hotel Do, one of the hospitals in Queens. Yeah.
That's a very interesting experience. I also didn't realize that you went to the CaRMS program. So I think it's a very cool combination of things overall. So thank you for sharing that.
Kind of following up on that line of questioning, we were wondering if you could speak a little bit about what it was like to apply to residency and how your residency has been so far.
hmm So I guess I'll start with how residency's going. It's honestly, it's been great. I can't complain. There's really nothing to complain about. So I'm at the University of Toronto, so I can mostly speak to the experiences I've had here, although I've done electives at other schools as well and can only say good things about those. But, I think residency's been great. The curriculum that we have at Toronto is very comprehensive. There's a lot of like subspecialty clinics that you can gain exposure to seeing patients even with the rarest of disease, which is not something, you can see every day. It's kind of incredible, these rare things that you read in textbooks. When you see a patient with it, it really helps to consolidate that information. And I found that in my residency program, the opportunities are really endless because there is something for everyone, no matter what your interest in dermatology is. So, like if you're interested in research, there's a lot of opportunities to work with leaders in the field, like like world known worldwide. There's a lot of hands-on and procedural cosmetic teaching that we get. If you're interested in teaching, we also are involved in teaching the undergraduate students. And it's just like really good variety, very good flexibility to tailor to what your interests are, what your career goals are. And even like people that do masters, or some people in my residency program are really, really big superstars and they do like a dual training program. So they're, doing derm, but they also do internal medicine, for example. So yeah, so it allows the flexibility for that. So I found it overall very supportive to the individual and what your goals are. And honestly, my favorite part of the program and my residency for sure are the people. We have staff that treat us like colleagues and like co-residents. You're working with them every day. So I find myself very lucky that a lot of my co-residents are not just co-residents to me. They've literally become my best friends and so, like a sisters I've never had. And so when you get to work with your friends, sometimes work doesn't feel like work, which is honestly, I'm so grateful to even have that. Yeah, so residency, it's been great. And in terms of applying to residency, I kind of touched on this before. I found obviously applying to a competitive specialty like dermatology is challenging for anyone, no matter what stage you're in, no matter what school you're going to. But from my experience, especially coming from a school that didn't have a dermatology program, I found there were extra barriers. Sometimes you have to create your own opportunities, right? So I'm so happy to see you guys having this podcast. Like, this is an example of you guys creating your own opportunities to network and to, research and to do more kind of networking opportunities that you've created for yourself, right? So, yeah, like my own experience, I did a lot of cold emailing, reaching out to residents and different staff that were outside of your own school, your home school. Having the flexibility to travel to different cities, perhaps to do research there, even if you don't have family there, making those kind of sacrifices. But for me personally, I got a lot of no's, right? And a lot of non-responses. So for anyone that's listening and that is struggling through this part of it, I reassure you it's normal. And all it takes is one yes, is that one opportunity. And for me, I got, it's also like luck as well. I consider myself pretty lucky. I got that one yes, and I found in my experience that it was almost like a snowball effect, that one opportunity led to many more opportunities, led to many more mentors that I was able to meet through this one connection. And yeah, for me, it really just snowballed and really drove my further interest in dermatology and got to know more people. And yeah, so I think that's my path. And of course, everyone's path is different, but that's, yeah, that's kind of my experience in applying to derm.
I'm really excited to hear how supportive the community is within residency. You hear all the time how difficult the experience can actually be. So the fact that you're raving about it is pretty exciting. And so in terms of kind of going to a school that doesn't have dermatology residency program, did you find that it was important to kind of try to do electives at the different sites that do, like Dalhousie, Ottawa, Toronto, or did you feel like just kind of building up your resume at one school was strong enough?
Hmm. I mean, again, I don't think there is a cookie cutter answer. In talking to my other colleagues that have applied, everyone had kind of different strategies and different routes to getting into dermatology. You know, some people, if location is really important to you and your family is all in one place, then it makes sense to put all of your baskets in that one school. For me, personally, because I was from a school without a program, I thought that best odds for myself was to kind of, you know, show some face time in the different schools that had programs. So I personally did do electives at all the schools. You know, but Derm is a very small community, right? So you see these people, you recognize their face at conferences, at different events, and things like that. So I think the most important thing is to kind of build long-term relationships. You know, electives are only like usually 2 weeks, right? So if you can, you know, get to know someone over the course, even if it's just a few interactions here or there, but over the course of a longer period of time, I think that's more important. And of course, electives, I think you guys are having electives in person now, right?
Yeah.
After COVID is almost done. Yeah, if you don't have a homeschool, that's really important too, because as a resident now on the other side, I think it's really important to see not just the resume, not just how many publications you have, but who you are as a person, how you work in the team environment, how you interact with everyone. Those skills that are less objective, I guess, and less measurable on paper are really important in a candidate as well, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And you touched on this briefly, but we still wanted to ask, what would you say your favorite and least favorite parts about dermatology are?
Hmm. Favorite and least favorite part. I would say favorite part would be that it's so diverse. I kind of touched on this before, like there's something for everyone, and you know, you can have a day with different patients with like completely different problems. So you can be doing some excisions, you can be seeing some acne, seeing some little kids, and like from like babies to like an old 100-year-old skin check. It could be so different. So I love that about dermatology, just being on your feet and not having the same thing and not really getting into a routine. I like that fast-paced nature. And what I like least about dermatology, I mean, realistically, I think at any job, whether it's inside of medicine or not, there are aspects that you like less. But so I think with derm, for me at this point, is probably also the same thing, that there's just so much variety. That's like probably one thing I struggle with, is that you only have a certain amount of hours in a day. And I personally, I love all aspects of dermatology. I love general dermatology. I love seeing the kids. I love doing surgical procedures. So just, you know, I'm gonna have to find a way to be able to balance all of that and see like kind of what proportions of each kind of subspecialty I want to incorporate in my practice in the future. But yeah, I don't know if that's a little bit of a weird answer, but it's kind of the same answer, but there's two sides of it. It's good and it's a bad thing. But I think, yeah, I think I'll just have to figure out what works for me.
I like that answer though. That's like really interesting because there's so much stuff that you can never get bored and you get to learn maybe something new or every day, but then it's also like you have to store all that information in your brain and balance all of that too. So it makes sense. And kind of building off of that, we were wondering if you could tell us a little bit of like what your day looks like, or maybe if your days are very variable, what a week looks like for you right now.
So just generally, I think in dermatology residency, it's kind of, I would say it's divided into kind of two sections. One is you're a junior resident, so first year, second year, a little bit of third year maybe. And then the second part is senior residency, so it's very different. Junior residency is usually, you're off service a lot, so it's less predictable, I would say. But for me, as a senior resident, you're on dermatology rotations for the whole year or, 2, 3 years, just rotating at different sites and, at different subspecialties sometimes. So again, every day can look different depending on what rotation you're on. But in general, if you're on a derm rotation, I would say, so in the morning, sometimes we have teaching. So that right now that's on Zoom. So if that happens, that will happen before clinic. And then we show up to clinic, we do our day of clinic. Usually you can sneak a lunch break in there. And then sometimes there's also teaching after clinic. And the senior residents are usually on day call, which means if anyone in the hospital or on the ward has a dermatologic condition, we're going to see them in consultation and deal with that problem. And so, yeah, after, if there's any consults and you're on call, you would be responsible for that after clinic. And I guess on Fridays, at least in my residency program, we have our academic day. So you're excused from your clinical duties, but it's a full day for senior residents. It's a full day of more didactic learning, practicing morphology, going through rounds and cases, patient cases, which are all very beneficial. So there's a one set day that's just dedicated for learning, which is great.
Wow, that's very cool. I guess I did hear that within dermatology, that's one of the specialties that you do the most amount of studying. So I guess it kind of aligns that you have a whole day for studying since it's so heavy on content.
Yeah.
So just as a quick follow-up, can you talk about whether you have any specific or unique roles as a chief resident or what that means even?
So I am one of the co-chief residents. Luckily, I have two of my great friends that are also co-chief residents. So we share this role. And so I guess what are our responsibilities? So we do plan the academic days and we plan them, we schedule them. So we're that kind of point of communication between the staff that are scheduled and kind of doing that scheduling. We also kind of lead and organize different resident events like the grad, any kind of social events, any kind of, I guess, like even our resident retreat, we're responsible for that as well. And I think the main role is to be a communication line between the residents and the staff. So if there's any kind of concerns with rotations, the residents will bring that up to us and then we'll bring it up at our meeting that we have with the staff in charge. And of course, we're on the residency committee and we do residency promotion. We're on that committee as well. So yeah, I think our biggest role would be to advocate for residents and resident wellness and education and being that line of communication and kind of closing that gap between residents and our faculty.
Okay, thanks for that.
Is that role something that you like get appointed, or did you have to run for it, or how does that process go about?
Yeah, so in our program, you apply for it. And yeah, I would say it's, it's a combination of a leadership role and just like an advocacy role is what I would say. But I've been enjoying it. And like I said, I share the position with two of my colleagues. And so we work really well together, and it's good to kind of distribute out some of the responsibility because sometimes a lot of things do come up. So, yeah, it's good to work in a team like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. The next question we had for you was if you, well, first off, if you work with students often in your current role, and if you do you have any advice for medical students who are currently on their clerkship rotations of what they could best do to help and support the team?
Yeah, so I do work with a lot of medical students. Of course, we have people rotating through that are just on dermatology, and also elective medical students from Toronto and also from other schools as well. And I do remember going on electives, wondering what can I do to stand out and to be memorable, right? And I would say now from the other side, I kind of alluded to this before, but I personally look for someone that is a team player, someone that can kind of read the room, read the atmosphere, and kind of adapt and do what can help the team and help the clinic run more efficiently. So, like I said, derm is a very fast paced specialty. So, efficiency is the name of the game. So, I would say more, I guess, practically, obviously be prepared. So, if you can, arrive to clinic early. I know those are small things, but I think it does go a long way to show that, you're not like running in at the last minute when the patient's already waiting in the room, right? For me personally, I remember too, especially if I'm on away elective, I like to get there early before people are usually there to kind of see where the rooms are, get a sense of the environment. Like these are small things that can really help your day go more smoothly, right? So you can see where are all the equipment. So if I need to grab a biopsy, I'm not like fussling around all the drawers. You know exactly where to go. Um, you know where the setup is, you know kind of what the flow would be like. Log into the computer. You have time to log in to see if your login works, right? Because there's always those hiccups on the first day. So I don't know. Those are just practical tips that seem obvious, but I think go a long way. So be prepared, show up early, make sure you have all your access ready to go. And if you can read around the cases before, even better, but sometimes that's not possible. So I think all of those things, and picking up the chart if you see one, not being asked to, like there's another patient waiting, do you want to go see it? Be more proactive that way. Anything you can do to be proactive. And at the end of the day, if for example we're seeing consults, you can offer to help. Like you don't want to be annoying, of course, but is there anything I can do to help? Or basically going beyond what is expected of you, right? Staying later to help out with things here and there. If they're having other academic like teaching sessions, like, and you're invited to them, then yeah, of course, go. It shows interest, right? You're going outside of what you're expected to do in the clinic. So I think all of those things kind of stand out to me more so than what your knowledge is, because the whole point of residency is to learn that knowledge. So as long as you're teachable, as long as you're easy to work with and hardworking and a good team player, all that knowledge stuff will come with time.
I really appreciate all the little tangible pearls you're sharing because I guess it is the small things that do add up from what it seems. So, on a little bit of a different note, we wanted to know what kind of things you enjoy doing for fun outside of work, and then how you've been able to balance this with studying and keeping up with your responsibilities in residency.
hmm Yeah, so I've always grown up a very active person. So for me, my energy charger is exercise or movement. So I love to go for a run. I love to do workout classes and try new classes with my friends. And in terms of how I balance that, of course, it's tough in any kind of busy career, not just medicine. But for me, it's gotten to a point, I think, where it's non-negotiable because I know that even though it takes up time now, it will help me stay sane. It will help me be a better physician and resident and be more clear-minded. So I'm not saying that that might be the energy charger for everyone, but I think it's important to find what really balances you and like, you know, what really energizes you, whether that be spending time with friends or taking a self-care day and taking a bubble bath, finding those things that charge your batteries and make sure you schedule them in, just like you schedule any other meeting, just like you schedule, your appointments. Put that in your calendar and keep those promises to yourself because it's really important to take care of yourself, to recharge your own batteries, to really function at your best.
And so you mentioned that you've kind of always been athletic. And so just in following your social media, I hope this isn't weird to say, but I've noticed that you shared, I think, your parents as well, or that your parents had an Instagram account. So are they also like athletes, like marathons, triathlons, something like that, I noticed?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm going to tell them to listen to this podcast and they'll be so happy to hear that. So, I mean, I think they've always been active people, but they haven't really gotten into sports until like pretty recently, maybe like
Weird.
5, 10 years ago. Yeah, like since I left since they were empty nesters, I guess. My main sport was actually volleyball. So I played varsity volleyball at Queen's University. And so they were mostly like volleyball players. And then we all started running maybe in 2013 or 15, something like that. But yeah, now I would say I'm probably the least athletic one of my family. My parents, I'm so proud. I feel like I'm a proud mom, but yeah, they've run multiple marathons, including the Boston Marathon this year, both of them. So yeah, they've really motivated me, which is why I'm starting to train for my first ever marathon. So wish me luck.
Wow, that's genuinely so inspiring because I think you shared it on Mother's Day or something. And I went to the account and I was like, wow, that's unbelievable. And so the fact that you said that they haven't been like this their whole life and this is kind of a newer hobby, wow, that is inspiring. And good luck to you on your first marathon. That's something hopefully I'll do one day as well.
Thank you so much. And it just goes to show, I think, that anything is possible. It's never too late. They started when they were 50, and you know what? I think they're just beginning now. So there's so much more to come. So it's never too late to follow your dreams and do what you're passionate about.
That's awesome. So before we head into our rapid fire questions, which are basically just some get to know you questions, we wanted to see if you had any overall advice for our listeners, kind of to close off this section of the podcast, or any advice for anyone who is pursuing the path of dermatology right now.
hmm Yeah, it can be a tough one, but I think it's important, like these podcasts, like, forming a community, talking with people that might know what you're going through. And I would say again, I think the most important thing is those relationships and the networking. I think that's very underrated, especially in small specialties. Everyone knows everyone, and word gets around, word of mouth, right? So, that's why I usually tell people like to do research. Of course, like if you love research, that's great. It's great for your CV. But I think it's more just building the relationship and having people know you outside of just a clinical setting. Yeah, I would say try to really find mentors and cherish those relationships.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that's very helpful, very deep advice. So definitely, I feel like will help apply to my own life as well. And so now to end off the episode, we would like to ask some rapid fire questions, kind of to help our listeners get to know you a little bit more outside of medicine. So Emma, why don't you take it away with our go-to question?
We've been asking all of our guests this question, and I feel like we have to as a dermatology podcast. So the first question is, what is your favorite skincare product currently?
Currently, I would say probably I'm using C Ferulic Vitamin C by SkinCeuticals. Not sponsored. I wish it was sponsored. No, just kidding. But yeah, I think vitamin C is a pretty hot ingredient right now, and yeah, I've been liking it.
Yeah, I think specifically the SkinCeuticals one has definitely gained a lot of attention. I think we had someone who said that it had the most research around it, so that's why they liked it. So it seems like that's kind of a consistent staple within dermatology right now.
Hmm.
So the next question would be, what is your go-to rainy day activity?
Ooh, probably going for a bowl of ramen or some kind of warm soup. And Toronto's great for that. There's a lot of food, but I'm also a foodie. Maybe that's why.
I like Toronto because you can never run out of places to try. Like I bet you there's just hundreds of amazing ramen places for that. Perfect.
And then our final question, keeping with the food theme, is what is your favorite dessert?
Oof, that's a tough one. Probably gelato or ice cream. I have a pretty sweet tooth.
It's kind of the go-to for the summer as well, especially with the hot weather. Do you have a
Very
favorite?
true. Ooh, it's a toss-up between pistachio and hazelnut. I can never decide, so I always get two soups. That's the truth.
I always get two scoops as well. I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but I am.
Hmm. That's why we work out, right?
Sure, balance, right?
Balance, exactly.
Okay, so we did mention your social media a lot throughout this podcast. So can you tell our listeners where exactly we can find you?
For sure. So you guys can find me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle is at Dr. Christina Huang. So DrChristiana
Perfect. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for listening and Dr. Wong for being here and taking the time out of her schedule to speak with us about everything dermatology. And we hope to have you all back here for our next episode. If you want to keep up with our podcast, offer any feedback, or know when we post our next episode, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Skin Curriculum or our website, which is www.skincurriculum.com. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Dose of Derm, and we hope you all take care.